Hello and welcome to Business Connections. This is a show produced by the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. I'm Holly Allen, Director of Marketing and Communications for the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce. Today we want to take you back 20 years to 1995. Back then a gallon of gas cost $1.09. Topping the Billboard charts was TLC and Boyz II Men, and the Bosnian War had been going on for nearly 4 years. 100,000 people had died, most of them Bosnians. And in November of that year, of 1995, under intense pressure from world powers, the leaders of the Republic of Yugoslavia, Croatia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina met in a neutral place. That was Hope Hotel at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, right here in the Dayton region. They were there to discuss peace. We showed you that photo. That was courtesy of the Dayton Daily News. It shows then Secretary of State Warren Christopher in the center. He was flanked by Bosnian president to the left and the Croatian president to the right as they signed the Dayton Peace Accord. That was November 10th of 1995. And that agreement laid out the government structure and political divisions for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And as we approach this 20th anniversary, the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce is excited to welcome the Bosnian ambassador here with us today, Jadranka Negodic, I apologize, and US Congressman Mike Turner here with us today. Thank you both for being with us. We so appreciate you sharing your time with the Chamber of Commerce. As we're approaching this 20-year anniversary, this is a big milestone. It's been 20 years, the signing of the Dayton Peace Accords. I want to ask both of you, what does this anniversary mean to you? I'll start with you, Madam Ambassador.
First of all, thank you for having me here. This anniversary means a lot to Bosnia and Herzegovina, to the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's 20 years after the end of the war. So Dayton Peace Accord paved the way for a peaceful future of the country and laid foundation for state building. As you know, Annex 4 of Dayton Peace Agreement is a constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it's based, state structure is based on that. It's a kind, for me, it was emotional yesterday visiting Hope Hotel to see the place where negotiations were held, where Dayton Peace Agreement signed. And it was a kind of, it's historical place. It's a special place in Bosnian history. So this 20th anniversary is the point, as 20 years is a long period of time, to do some overview where Bosnia and Herzegovina was 20 years ago and where Bosnia and Herzegovina is now, 20 years after. What's been achieved, what lessons we learned, what we would like to do in the future, and based on last 20 years to have a vision of the future of the country.
I'll ask you, Congressman Turner, what does this anniversary mean to you?
You know, Dayton is planning a celebration, as the 20th anniversary is coming up here in this November. And it's not just a celebration of the events that occurred here historically. It really is a celebration of the special relationship that we have with Bosnia-Herzegovina. Our community, after the peace accords were negotiated, reached out to Bosnia and conducted several exchanges. Our institutions, our hospitals, our universities, even our Philharmonic did an exchange with our Philharmonic played in Sarajevo, and the Sarajevo Philharmonic came and played here. The municipal governments did exchanges. For example, the homicide detectives for the Sarajevo Police Department were trained by the Dayton Police Department. We stepped forward as a community and believed the call that came out from President Clinton and his efforts to not only bring peace but build democratic institutions in Bosnia needed that nexus or community action that we've undertaken. Another aspect that we celebrate, I think, is that our community not only embraced Bosnia and the implementation of the Dayton Peace Accords, we sort of took on the issue of peace as a concept. How do we promote peace as a community? How do we have a responsibility individually? And from that, the Dayton Peace Accords gave us the Dayton Peace Prize and, of course, the Dayton Literary Peace Prize. The Dayton Literary Peace Prize is given every year where authors who have written significant works that contribute overall to the promotion of peace come to our community and receive an award for their contribution. Of course, the Dayton Peace Accords Award, the Dayton Peace Prize, which has been given 3 times previously, I think also symbolizes our understanding that the word Dayton no longer just means a place along I-70 and 75, but it means a process and a journey towards peace.
Madam Ambassador, I want to talk to you a little further. You mentioned visiting Hope Hotel and how emotional that was for you. Would you mind sharing some of the things you thought about as you stood in that place and reflected on the past 20 years for your country?
Well, yesterday when I was there, it just brought me back, 20 years ago, when the people of Bosnia suffered a lot during the war, that 4 years. As you said, more than 100,000 dead, 2 million displaced people all around the world. Mm-hmm. And finally, after 4 years of war, they got the peace, mm-hmm. And for me, it was a kind, as I said, history of my country. Since then, 20 years since signing Dayton Peace Agreement, the country got the peace, got the future, got the hope to build up the country and have some space, that the people of Bosnia deserve, and with the other countries in the region, build up the country. Mm-hmm. And expect to join to Euro-Atlantic integrations and to become a family of prosperous countries, and let the people live in peace and kids to be educated in peace and have a bright future.
How have things changed there in the 20 years since?
Well, there was a change, lots of change. First of all, country in last 20 years managed to remove all the, consequences on a war. Let's say the buildings are renovated, and once you come to Sarajevo, you can hardly see somewhere that the war was there 20 years ago. And we had a chance to build up the country, to establish some institutions that are really crucial to for the reforms in order to catch up with the other countries in the region to join the European Union. Having cooperation with the other countries we seek or we have at the moment, and we hope we'll expand that cooperation in order to get the young people of Bosnia a chance to study in other countries, or to open our universities for mm-hmm. young people from all abroad. And I would say that we live like the other countries in the region. For us, priority is cooperation with neighboring countries, mm-hmm. regional cooperation, and then joining the European Union and NATO.
A long way in 20 years.
Yeah, it is a long way.
Congressman Turner, I want to ask you, you have an interesting perspective, I think, on the peace accords, because you were the mayor of Dayton at the time. Can you share with us what you remember from being in that position, and what was happening in the Dayton area?
Well, the Dayton community really embraced the fact that the peace accords were occurring here. There were candlelight vigils, there were prayer services. Around the community, they took even a spiritual responsibility to try to support what was occurring there within the bounds of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. But I think, immediately afterwards, the fact that the community said, we're going to play a role, we're going to help support Bosnia, was very unique. And now President Clinton had invited me as the mayor to participate in the Commerce Department's economic initiative. I traveled to Bosnia in July of 1996 with then Commerce Secretary Mickey Cantor. And we were encouraged then by the administration to establish a sister city relationship between Sarajevo and Dayton, and to give a framework, if you could, a structure for some of those exchanges. And then Doris Ponens, who was very active in the community, led a Friendship Force delegation in December of '96. About 35 members of the Dayton community traveled to Sarajevo. And this was a time where they didn't have running water for the entire day. A couple hours a day, running water was available. Electricity wasn't always available. So, and obviously the evidences of the war were very much present. But this is a time where relationships were established. Jakub Fenci of La Benevolencia, an organization in Sarajevo, was our host. Jakub Fenci ultimately became a plaintiff in international court that challenged the Dayton Peace Accords constitution to try to move Bosnia from the framework of the Constitution that was given post-war that ended the war and brought peace to a more governable structure that Bosnia is still trying to reach for today.
Wow, it's quite the perspective you have after, that experience being in the Dayton area. And now you have a different perspective because you're not, so localized, you're representing the nation as a whole and your experience with NATO. Can you talk about how that relationship between the U.S. and Bosnia has changed and evolved over the years? I'll start with you, Congressman Turner.
Sure. Well, there's a couple things that, obviously the United States continues to be the lead in the advocacy for Bosnia to make the transition to the EU and to NATO. Bosnia has been a very strong partner in peacekeeping initiatives and in working with NATO and NATO deployments. Their military transformation has been probably one of their forward-leaning areas of government structures and institutions. The United States still provides a significant amount of aid to Bosnia, and I think we see that we have a responsibility that it's not just the peace was accomplished and the war is over, but ensuring that transition that Bosnia is undertaking. And there are things that we also fund, such as the continuation of the demining process. Bosnia had 4 to 6 million unexploded, unidentified landmines throughout the country when the war ended. The United States continues to provide funding to try to identify those landmines and neutralize them. And then in areas where we've tried to provide healing for some of the atrocities. There was a significant massacre in Srebrenica where 5,000 to 7,000 people were murdered. And the United States has continued to fund forensics to return the deceased, those who were murdered, to their families. I was in Srebrenica where 500 of those victims were returned to their families for burial with the Tri-Presidency of Bosnia. And this is part of the effort the United States has undertaken to not just walk away or ignore what happened, but also to provide some healing for those families.
Do you have some insight, Madam Ambassador?
Well, I must emphasize that the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina are really grateful to the U.S. for their role in stopping the war and bringing peace for country. And the same feeling to the U.S. is existing nowadays, because we think that the U.S. is the most important ally and supporter of Bosnia and Herzegovina. They fully support us on our way to the European integration. They support the initiative of European Union to put aside some sort of political disputes and open the doors for economic reforms that would bring us closer to EU membership. And we really rely on the U.S. support as the most important. On the other hand, we are the partner of U.S. in fighting terrorism. We are one country out of 62 taking part in fighting ISIS, and our forces are in the mission, peacekeeping missions all around the world. So I think from the country could be called out recipient of international peace missions, we can now contribute to other countries, sharing our experience and giving our contribution. Apart from that, U.S. is in Bosnia through USAID, investing in different projects. And I would like to take this opportunity to emphasize the importance of the cooperation with Maryland National Guard in order to train and educate our armed forces and actually prepare them for the next phase on our way to NATO membership. That's our foreign policy goal number one, and we rely on support of the U.S. on that road.
I think a lot of people, they hear about the Accords, I think they know some of the history, but they aren't sure about where things stand now. And so to kind of elaborate on that, are the Accords still being upheld? How have things evolved as the country has evolved over the last 20 years?
Well, it is. As I said, Dayton Peace Accords is the foundation of the state building and actually the construction of the country. So after the period of few years after 95 of implementation, the articles of Annex 4, from 4 state ministers on the state level, we now have 9. We have more than 70 agencies, institutions that we had to form in order to fulfill the requirements from the European Union. So we progressed. But at some point, it's obvious that there are some obstacles in terms that these reforms require efficient state, not so long decision-making process. So it brings us to the point to think about the future and how to do some sort of amendments. I think a few years ago there were talks about Dayton 2 or to do some important amendments, but well, there were different opinions how to do it. What is the approach? You know, whether to tackle just 1 or 2 issues, or to do that in a broader way, as we had to do something regarding the decision of Court of Human Rights in order to enable all citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina to take part or to be elected in parliament or presidency. We are not able to do that now. So I think that will be the issue for the future. Mm-hmm. It's too serious. It's so complex, and it needs the participation, not just the political leaders, but the people of Bosnia, actually, to say what they want, what country they would like to see. So that will be hard job for the future, next few years. But as we had elections in October, now we have a new government and parliament, and I think that will be their priority.
You mentioned, you spoke to our members, the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce members, and of course they were interested in the economy in Bosnia, and I think you both discussed the importance of support from U.S. businesses as well, investing in the economy in Bosnia. Madam Ambassador, could you talk a little bit about what the economy, what the state of the economy is in Bosnia today?
For a quite number of years, the economy was and is weak and struggling. And it's obvious that we can't do a significant improvement without foreign investments. That's why our government worked hard on proposing the legislation that will enable foreign investors to be sure that their investments will be guaranteed, to make the procedure of establishing company simple and as easy as it's possible, and somehow to attract the foreign investors to find the interest to come to Bosnia. I think we have lots of resorts, natural resorts, and we have potential. And the most important of all, we have young labor force. They are educated, they are skillful, they are cheap compared to the other countries. So there are all sorts of, advantages we can offer. That's why I would like to somehow make the representatives of business community here to be more interested to come to Bosnia, and then in contact with the Bosnian business people to find the interest where they could come and invest and help us in that way.
Congressman Turner, could you speak to that as well? What sort of opportunities exist for U.S. companies?
There is incredible economic potential in Bosnia, and I think for the people who live in Bosnia, they have seen progress, but they don't see really how much they have accomplished, because it has been over a slow period of time. But when you go to Bosnia and then you leave and you come back, it's always astonishing to see how much development and growth has occurred. Shortly after the war, there were significant impediments. One, it was a war zone. A lot of the infrastructure had been damaged or destroyed. There were landmines that posed a threat. So there were areas that, even in agriculture, that had difficulty returning. Most of the employment in the area was through either government itself or through NGOs that were coming in trying to help build the democratic institutions. That transitioned, obviously, as goods and services were necessary for moving the country forward. And today, as the ambassador said, you see, a thriving market where You have highly skilled labor. You have infrastructure. You have a great transportation location in Europe itself. Although they do not have European EU membership, they do have a partnership agreement with the EU that is allowing them, as the ambassador was saying, to put into place some of the structures that make commerce easier. But for those who look to Bosnia, I think that they'll find that it's a good place to do business with a very good workforce and a great access to Europe. In fact, the ambassador had said that labor is cheap. It certainly is incredibly economical. But the thing that I think people will find who look to Bosnia as a place to invest is that they're making a difference. Bosnia is a place that needs the attention. It helps not only for its long-term stability, but also economically. Bosnia is going to grow, and you can be a part of that growth.
What does the future hold for Bosnia, Congressman Turner?
I think that the future is very bright for Bosnia, and not only do you see that the peace accords, the peace agreement held, and democratic institutions but thriving within Bosnia. I think it's the spirit of the people of Bosnia that you can see that gives you that sense of what they're going to accomplish in the future. As the ambassador spoke before the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce, she was saying that there had not been, even though it's been a war zone and many people had died, there had not been the sense of resentment and retribution. There had been a sense of looking forward. And I think that's where the future of Bosnia is going to be very bright, because when you talk to the people that are there, they really are looking toward the future, and they're very committed to it.
Madam Ambassador, what does the future hold?
I think we have a bright future, really. We have a huge potential. We have the hard-working people. We have a generation of brilliant young people who are eager to prove themselves, to get the chance, to get the job. And combined with the countries in the region, they are all small or a little bit bigger. We can share the market, and with our progress to the European Union, where we will implement the standards and norms, all over all other countries. I think in a few years' time we will show what we can, because we are a small country. We can adopt. We can catch up with the others. So I'm optimistic.
We're excited to see what's in store. Well, Congressman Turner, you mentioned the events coming up here in Dayton. That will be this fall, and there's a committee. They're putting that together already. So there is a lot of good stuff in store for the Dayton region as we remember and we celebrate 20 years since the Dayton Peace Accords. In fact, the Chamber is involved in one of those events, so you can follow us at DaytonChamber.org and keep up to date as those events unfold and they come together. You can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Thanks so much for being with us.
Our sincere thanks to Bosnian Ambassador Jadranka Negodic and Congressman Mike Turner for being our special guests on today's Business Connection. This is an opportune time to think about the very important international event that took place here in Dayton at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in the fall of 1995. 20 years ago, our nation and our community played host to diplomatic conversations that ultimately led to the signing of the Dayton Peace Accords. This international agreement not only stopped the fighting and slaughter of Balkan country citizens, but started the rebuilding process that has moved these countries towards the reconstruction of their nation's cities, infrastructure, and peace between warring people and religions. Today's show is a great opportunity for our community to start our anniversary event. This event can be actively shared by all of us who believe peace and prosperity trump war and economic collapse any day. We hope that you've enjoyed the program and will participate in November in this 20th year celebration.